Welcome back to the third video in the series for creating a simple to-do list app in LiveCode Create. In the previous video, we created this user interface for the My Tasks screen. In this video, we'll be finishing off the UI section of these videos by doing the UI for the Add and Edit Tasks screen. They are pretty much identical in terms of UI, but the first thing that we need to do is make sure that we navigate to the Add Task screen. One thing just to say before we do that is this navigation rail here will appear on all three screens, but we do want to add some actions to it first. So we'll do that in a future video. If you can go to the Add Task screen by going into the project browser and double clicking on Add Tasks, and as before, you know you're in the Add Tasks screen if it says it right here above the app canvas area. Okay, great. So what we're going to do here is we are going to add the fields that will be required to input a new to-do list item. And in future videos, we will hook that up so that when you add something to this list, it will send that data to your collection and your list on the My Tasks screen will automatically update. So the first thing that we need is a field. We may adjust the sort of positioning of these a little bit later once we actually do add in the navigation rails. But we can take a rough idea at sizing just now. So I've got that roughly about 550-ish by 60 or thereabouts, and I'm probably going to have it just slightly off of center, and this is going to be my field for entering the title of my task. So one important thing to do here is to give it a unique name, which will really help later on when we are doing both data binding and actions. So I'm going to call this title. I'm happy with this being a single line field. The next one won't be. We'll look at that in just a moment. And the label for it, I want to be title. Now we just continue down this section. If we go into functionality, you can see you have all sorts of options within functionality, none of which that we'll need for this specific app, but there's lots of useful things in here to be aware of. And then if we now have a look inside appearance, and I don't think we have to change very much here. One thing we might want to change is the focus color, which is what it'll change the border just to keep it in line with the rest of our app. So if I change the focus color here, and I'm going to make that the same blue color that we used previously. Again, you don't need to really use the same colors as me, but if you want to, it's 1976D2. Gives us that nice blue color, which we'll see in just a moment. And there's one more thing I want to change here, and it is the float label section here. Now I can quickly show you this in action if I go into run mode, just to give you a feel for what this does. Can you see how this is floating in this top section here? Now we don't want to use it, or I don't want to use it for this specific application, so I'm going to say that I never want that to be on, which is right here. So float label is currently auto. I am just going to say none. Now what I'm going to do here is just duplicate this so I can keep a bunch of those settings into the next one. So I'll duplicate, and we'll line this up using our guidelines. And this one I would like to be a text area, which allows, we'll have this something about kind of 120-ish. Okay, great. Now I want to change this. I want this to be called description. And I'll change the title to be the same. Perfect. Okay, the next field item that we want here is a drop down. So if I drag on the drop down widget, and this is going to be for selecting which category the to-do list item belongs to. So just for example, is it a personal item? Is it a work item? Is it something else? So again, we'll line this up using our guidelines just to get it all lined up quite nicely. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give that a name of category. And I want the contents of it to be work, personal, and other. And this, you'll see how this all sort of joins together in future videos. Now, just one last thing to change. I would like to change the focus color, and I would like it to change it to that blue color that we had earlier. So 1976D2, if you're following along, color for color. And that should give us 1976D2. Perfect. And I might just change this here as well, just to be a nice light gray color. Something kind of like that. Okay, now next up we want to add on a button. The button is where we're going to add our action to later to send all of this information to our collection. So if we drop a button onto our layout, and again we'll just quickly line it up using our guidelines. Okay, great. And that is actually the blue color already, so we don't need to change anything about that. But what we will change is the label. We'll say add task. And I'm just going to go down to the appearance, and I'm going to make the semi-bold. And I'm just going to increase the font size here to about that, something nice and big. Okay, one last thing to add to this screen before we move on. I'm just going to select all the items on the screen and just move them down a touch to make room for our text label. Something like that should be just about right. We can see later on once we actually add the navigation rail back in, but I think that's probably close enough. And this label here, very similar to the one that we had on the My Tasks screen. We want the contents of it to be add a task, and again we can set the fonts inside, or we'll set the font anyway here to the semi-bold. We can set the text size, or I can choose the typography, and I think before I used headline medium, which is just this nice big headline. In fact, for this, we'll center this within this section here. Great, that looks really good. Okay, so like I say, we can tweak about with that a little bit later on to get it looking just right. But what I'm going to do now, just to finish off our final screen and conclude the UI section of these videos, is I'm going to highlight all of these, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to duplicate to, the edit tasks screen. So I've done that. If I now go to the project browser, and if I now navigate to my edit tasks screen, you can see I'm now in my edit tasks screen. And the only change I'm going to make here is on the actual label itself. And I'm just going to change that to say edit task. Actually, there's two changes I want to make here. I'm going to change the label of the button also, just to say update. Okay, good work everybody. That's us now concluded the UI section of the simple to-do list app. And next up we will be having a look at setting up the data, so looking at collections and data binding. See you in the next video.